Hello and welcome. My name's Mark Maloney. I'm the Executive Director and the Acting Dean of the Paris School of International Affairs. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this evening's event. I'm delighted that so many of you have joined us, both here, but also online for what will be no doubt a memorable occasion. As many of you will know, this past Wednesday, the 15th of September, was the International Day of Democracy. It's a day that's intended to provide an opportunity to review the state of democracy across the world. According to the United Nations, the values of freedom, respect for human rights, and the principle of holding periodic and genuine elections by universal suffrage are essential elements of democracy. In turn, democracy provides the natural environment for the protection and the effective realization of human rights. You will understand, therefore, that today's event, highlighting the example of Belarus, is both extremely relevant and perfectly timed. Dear Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, on behalf of Sciences Po and the Paris School of International Affairs, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the prestigious Boutimi Amphitheater, named after the man who founded Sciences Po 149 years ago. We are honored and delighted to have you with us today. The roles and responsibilities that you and your colleagues took up just over a year ago have been an inspiration to us all. Moreover, the images of thousands of women walking in the streets with smiles on their faces and flowers in their hand is etched in our collective memories. Let me extend also a personal greeting from Enrico Letta, who, as you know, stepped down as Dean of PSIA last spring to return to Italian politics. Indeed, I believe it was Enrico who first encouraged you to exchange with the students of Sciences Po and PSIA during your next visit to Paris. And when I shared news of your visit today, he replied to say, "I'm so happy." I was shortly asked Professor Lequesne to introduce today's event and our guest of honor more fully. For those of you who don't know, Christian is a professor of political science at Sciences Po, the former director of the Center for International Research, CERI. He's the co-editor of the European Review of International Studies, and he has a long and very rich list of publications. He's a teacher at PSIA as well, has always been. His current research focuses on the European Union's external action and the sociology of diplomatic practices. Dear Christian, merci beaucoup. Thank you for everything you've done to make this event happen. Let me now hand over to you as chair and wish you a rich and inspiring session.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good evening, everyone. It's always impressive to address a full conference hall, especially when we know that your audience is coming from all over the world, which is the case tonight. Studying is probably a privileged moment of life. It's a privileged moment because it gives time to reflect. And I'm sure that among your reflections, there is one which occupies a large space. This is the reflection about democracy. Democracy as a system of governance, democracy as a political regime in which everyone can exercise the freedom to think, to work, to criticize, to oppose. You know, dear students, that this freedom is far from being the rule for all the societies in the world. Authoritarianism, dictatorship still prevail by force in many states, imposing violence and poverty to the population, that this is the case in Myanmar today or in Afghanistan. And Europe is probably a continent more spared than others, but it does not mean that Europe is an entirely unspoiled continent. I have spent a great deal of my professional life understanding or analyzing the European Union. And I have to say, after 30 years, and I'm sad to say that even in this union based on values of principles of freedom, democracy remains very fragile. East of the EU, directly on our borders, there is today a country in which authoritarianism continues to prevail with all the classic ranges of evils, including arbitrary arrest, imprisonment of civil activists, and of course, fake elections. This country is Belarus. But in Belarus, the hope for democracy remains strong because there is a free and independent civic movement which refuse the fatality of dictatorship. We have the great privilege tonight at Sciences Po to experience in life the energy of this democratic movement. Dear students, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to give now the floor to the leader of the Belarusian democratic movement, who courageously ran for the 2020 presidential election, Mrs. Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya.
Bonjour. I don't speak French. Honorable Dean, Professor Lequesne, distinguished professors and honorable guests, dear friends of Sciences Po. C'est près, c'est proche was the title of the photo exhibition dedicated to Belarus that I attended this week in Paris. There is much that astonishes, much that disturbs and shocks, and much to admire in many photographers displayed at the vernissage, capturing moments of courage, strength, and solidarity, the Belarusian awakening. And facing the deepest political, economic, and health crisis since our country's independence in 1991, Belarusians have united, taken off the chains of the past, liberating themselves from fear, longing for freedom, justice, and solidarity. And the presidential campaign announced on May 2020 has inspired unforeseen levels of mobilization and participation. Through Telegram and social media channels, we mobilized our families, friends, and colleagues to go to the ballots and give voice for their discontent. We collected thousands of signatures for presidential candidates, built an army of election observers, created digital platforms to benefit from our society's collective intelligence, unleashing creative campaigns, slogans, projects, ideas, a true force of democracy, never seen in Belarus before. And we were really surprised. We saw tens of thousands of Belarusians who were united by the same aspiration to live in a free country where citizens' rights are respected, where the voice of civil society is heard. C'est près, c'est proche. The protests reached every Belarusian family, every corner of our country, men and women, young and old, workers and teachers, journalists and doctors, students and professors, sportsmen and artists, opera singers and entrepreneurs, IT specialists and shop assistants, coming from both urban progressive centers and rural conservative centers. Among them, hundreds of professors and thousands of students, just like you. 1 year ago, students of State Linguistic University in Minsk gathered in protest against strict presidential elections and demanding Lukashenko's resignation. The words of La Marseillaise filled the lobby of the Great Soviet building in the center of Minsk, close to the Victory Square, reminding of the Second World War, the alma mater of many Belarusians who studied foreign languages and international relations. The students sang the French national anthem, calling for the end of tyranny. C'est près, c'est proche. And together we have become the voice of the Belarusian society that for so long have been silent, threatened, and oppressed. And when I ran for president more than a year ago, out of love to my husband, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, who wasn't registered as presidential candidate, but thrown behind the bars instead, I didn't think that I could win. I didn't believe in free elections in Belarus, but I believed that Lukashenko would understand that his time was over. I didn't have any political experience or ambition. I didn't have any conventional base or the reputation required for entering politics. I wasn't even sure that I would have enough strength or courage to go through this campaign. But then I felt an immense wave of support and solidarity. Our society has changed. We were tired of thinking that nothing depended on us and that only a strong leader, a messiah, would ensure stability and prosperity. We didn't want a strong leader, but a strong society. Liberté, égalité, fraternité is what united the people of Belarus in the fight of free democratic country. Freedom to choose our own leader, equality of all citizens before the law, fraternity and solidarity irrespective of political views and convictions. C'est près, c'est proche. Hundreds of thousands of Belarusians found courage to take to the streets to protest against rigged election results. The Lukashenko regime responded with an unprecedented level of violence. More than 36,000 people have been detained since the election, experienced humiliation, intimidation, and torture. And there have been over 50,000 people repressed. Thousands of my fellow citizens were forced to leave the country. And today there are more than 650 political prisoners in Belarus, with many facing lengthy prison sentences. Thousands of Belarusians were forced to leave the country, like myself. This is Belarus of Lukashenko, built on violence, repressions, and fear. A country in the heart of Europe where death penalty exists until today. A country where people are victims of lawlessness and arbitrary decisions. A country without the future. But this is not what we want. We don't want to be paralyzed by fear. We want to build a democratic Belarus based on our shared values of freedom and solidarity. We don't want our athletes to be forced into exile. We don't want our journalists to be hijacked together with other innocent European citizens for the sake of personal revenge. We don't want Belarus to be an international threat. We don't want our country's leadership to encourage illegal migration influx. We don't want Belarus to be isolated. We want the world to see the Belarus of Max Chagall, who imagined a different world inspired by his native town of Vitebsk. Having emigrated to Paris in 1910, he continued drawing pictures of Vitebsk, paintings that inspired the world. We want the world to see the Belarus of Hayam Sutin, whose painting Yeva, acquired by the Belarusian Belgazprom Bank and its former director and presidential candidate Viktor Babarika, inspired hundreds of thousands of Belarusians to join the protests. We want the world to see the Belarus of Maria Kolesnikova, a successful flute player and culture manager, whose courage and optimism know no boundaries, and without whom I wouldn't have found strength to lead the presidential campaign. When forced to leave the country and driven to the border with the Ukraine by the officers of the Belarusian Civil Secret Services, she tore up her passport, choosing unfreedom for the sake of your country's future. She has been now sentenced to 11 years in prison, but she hasn't broken. Belarus knows another famous prisoner, French statesman and military Charles de Gaulle. Many don't know the fact, but he was kept in captivity in Belarus, in a small city, Shchuchin, during the First World War. But we don't want Belarus to be famous for its prisons, but for its people. And we are facing many challenges today: climate crisis, rising inequalities, eroding trust in democracy, deepening international conflicts. And you will be among those who will have a say on what course of history we will take. And look around you. Don't be frightened by tradition. Everything around you was invented at some point in history, even this prestigious university where you are currently studying. And there is only one piece of advice to give you based on my personal experience. Do things you love and out of love, out of true conviction and dedication. Go forward regardless of your fear or what others might say. Sometimes our lack of experience and preconceived ideas can be our main asset. Often we tend to underestimate our inner strength and ability to learn new things and adapt. And you never know what future might have in store for you. You never know how many people's lives you might be able to touch and change apart from your own. So be bold, be vulnerable. Step into tomorrow by shaping the world today. And the future belongs to you. Viva la France, long live Belarus, and Живи Беларусь.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya, for your strong words, which gave us a lot of hope for the future. Si près, si proche. It's time now to organize an exchange with the students. And I would like to point out that this limited speaking time will be fully devoted to students. In agreement with Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya, we will take two types of contributions. Questions, of course, but also opinions on the future of democracy in Belarus and in the world, because Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya is also interested to, well, hear some of your statements. There is only one condition and this is not Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya condition, this is the president's conditions, my condition, the chair's condition, it shall not exceed 1 minute, okay? So I trust you all. You have 2 mics, one on the left and one on the right. And Sviatlana, if you agree, we're going to take 3 questions, a series of 3 questions, and then I give you the floor. All right? All right, but maybe I'm going to start with a question. Because I'm an old student. You mentioned, of course, the movement and the peaceful movement, which was very impressive for us in your country. We as, citizens of the European Union, of course, we have a lot of sympathy for this movement. We try to support it. EU has a policy of sanctions vis-à-vis the Lukashenko regime. My first question is, what could we do, well, better in the EU? Or what would be a priority, or your point of view, in the EU to support the Belarus movement?
Maybe looking back in August, September, October 2020, I think maybe in European Union decisions could be accepted faster, and these decisions could be braver. I have to underline that we are really grateful to international community, to democratic countries that since the beginning they were supporting us, showing their solidarity. Majority of the countries didn't accept elections as true. Lukashenko wasn't accepted as a legitimate president, but seeing the hell in Belarus, seeing all those tortures and blue bodies, after prison, I think that international community could be braver in their decisions. And the first 3 rounds of sanctions that were imposed, they were like more moral sanctions. There were only 80 people on them. And since August, more than 35,000 people have been detained and hundreds of thousands have been tortured. So it was sad to see at this, but this is foreign policy. Decisions were made rather slow because it was our pain, and we didn't understand. Don't you see what's happening? Please be braver. Maybe speed was disadvantage of European Union decisions, but seen after hijacking Ryanair flight, when security of European Union was under threat, decision was made very fast, and sectoral sanctions were imposed. So it's our Belarusian people asked the question: are our lives less valuable than lives of European people? But we are not offended, of course. We understand the situation, but sometimes we see how Belarusians were brave, that they sacrificed with their lives and freedom, and we thought that, look, we are your neighbors. Look at us, be brave as we are. And now when the situation is, it is changing. On the one hand, the violence is still in Belarus. People are not giving up. People are resistant. People are fighting undergroundly, mostly in cyberspace. But anyway, the mood of people hasn't changed. We want changes. We want to get rid of dictatorship and build normal democratic country. But processes are going on in the regime as well. Regime is weak. It is weakened by sanctions. It's weakened by uprising of people. And now it's the task of international community not to lose this moment. You have to be consistent. You have to be, you have to have strong position. Don't have any deals with Lukashenko's regime. Don't trade with political prisoners. So be braver now.
Thank you very much. And now it's time to listen to the students. So the floor is yours. I see.
Здравствуйте, госпожа Тихановская, и спасибо за то, что вы приняли приглашение нашего университета. But I'll ask the question in English for everyone's convenience.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
I wanted to ask you about the situation that's unfolding on the border between Belarus and Poland and Lithuania. That is the question of immigrants that Lukashenko's regime is sending to European borders. And I wanted to ask you, what should the EU do? Because on one hand, if we accept them, it means that we allow Lukashenko to use these poor people as a tool as a weapon of war. But if we don't, we just sort of leave them there with their suffering. And what should be Europe's approach, in your opinion? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another question? Yes. Could you please come to the mic? And if there is a third question, you can prepare yourself, okay?
Right, so I'm from Estonia. My question is actually about the more domestic approachment of Lukashenko towards Putin, at least what appears to be. So I wanted to ask, what do you see as the future of the status quo and the future between Belarus and Russia? Do you see that there will be a further approaching between the two countries, or what will the future look like on that front? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please.
Yes, I have a question about, let's say you assume power, what are some of the first policies you would implement? And also, how do you work with the governmental apparatus? So not only the government is very corrupt, also is the whole apparatus and the administration that works behind Lukashenko. How do you work with them? How do you change it? Do you fire people? And how does it execute it in the end? Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya. Yes.
It's the question of how to deal with the government.
Okay. Thank you for your questions. As for illegal migration, everybody understand that Lukashenko takes revenge on the countries that hosted democratic forces who greatly help relicants, Belarusian relicants who had to flee the country because of repressions. And this is the problem, not only Lithuania, Poland, or Latvia. This is the problem of other countries as well. No, on the one hand, of course, I understand that human rights of those poor people who are deliberately brought to the borders are abused, and European countries want to take care of those people. But everybody understands that Lukashenko blackmails European countries with this illegal migration. And I think that Lithuania and Poland chose correct strategy. They are not allowing those people enter the country, because this is the problem of the regime. And this is like a battle who has kind of heart, Europe or Belarus. Of course, Europe, nobody doubt this, but it's, you know, Europe shouldn't play this disgusting Lukashenko's game. You brought those poor people to the borders, and these people is your problem. You know, and I see that some organizations are blaming Lithuania and Poland that they are not allowing all those people. They are talking about human rights of Iraq's and people from you know, other countries. And sometimes, not sometimes, those organizations are not very vocal about human rights abuses in Belarus, the core of the problem. And I think that European Union countries should help Lithuania and Poland to deal with, to help people who are already on the territory of European Union, but to stay strong with the policy that Lithuania and Poland have chosen, not allow people, enter Europe. Maybe I'm mistaken, the greatest brains are thinking about how to solve this crisis, but we don't have to forget, we may build walls. We may not allow people to come into Europe, but always remember the core of this problem. Illegal migration is just symptoms of illness, and illness is Lukashenko's regime. If not migration, he will invent something else the same as ugly as and disgusting as migration, and will blackmail again and again the European Union. So treat the problem, but not the symptoms. Relations in future between Belarus and Russia. We always underline that our fight is not geopolitical. We are not fighting against Russia or against, Europe or Australia. Our fight is inside our country. It's pro-democratic fight. Russia will always be our neighbors. We have wonderful relationship with Russian people. And the fact that Kremlin is supporting Lukashenko at the moment, of course, we were disappointed with this. Thank you. Yeah, but our task now is to send clear message that our fight will continue despite of Kremlin will support Lukashenko or not. And if Russia wants to play a constructive role in solving out the crisis, so they don't have to interfere into internal affair, and we send clear message that we will have a future government of our country, democratic government, with absolutely sure we'll have trade relationship with Russia. But this relationship will be transparent, will be clear for people. No deals will be undersigned, under carpet when people don't know what's going on between our two countries. And yeah, we are neighbors. We want a good relationship in the future with Russia and Poland and Lithuania and every country around. And remind me, and the third question about what to do with the people in the regime. There is a small group of people around Lukashenko's figure who will be loyal to him only because they are hooked. They may be blackmailed by Lukashenko. Nobody is beside him because they love him, for sure. But let's take law enforcement or OMON or Gubopik people whose hands are in blood already. Of course, they understand that they committed crimes against humanity, against Belarusians, and they will be with Lukashenko till the end, till he collapses. But all those who didn't commit any crimes, they're just technocrats who could easily work with democratic government, with new principles where will be rule of law. We are trying to work with them on different level. We have National Anti-Crisis Management, where Pavel Latushka is working. They have many ex-ministers, ex-diplomats who are working with them, and they know how to communicate, and they are doing this. They are communicating, trying to persuade ministers who are still in the regime to stop collaborating with the regime. There will be no future with Lukashenko. So it's no sense to stay on sinking Titanic with him, but you can choose better future for you, for your children. And we are working with the law enforcement forces as well. We have a group of people who are ex-law enforcement officers that were fired after they told they're not going to participate in crimes, and they are located in Warsaw now. And they tell us that the mood in the army, in law enforcement is awful. People are afraid of the regime, of course. They're afraid for their families, for their children, but they also understand that, look, it's impossible to work in such society. You are spied all the time. You are frightened all the time. They would like to change everything as well, but they don't see possibility how to do this. But our task is to communicate, to persuade them. And when the day comes, for example, there will be trigger and there will be nationwide strike in Belarus, or again, uprising, we will be sure that they will not beat people, they will not kill people. So it's like building connections, building infrastructures on the ground. So we are working with separate people because it's impossible to be very vocal. It's impossible to have public response from them. People are frightened, but it's up to everyone to decide to be on the black side or move to New Belarus with us.
Thank you very much. I suggest that we take a series of 3 questions. So you can position yourself at the mic, and we're starting with the gentleman here.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you for being here and answering our questions. I know you said that your fight isn't geopolitical, but let me put back geopolitics on the table. Isn't Russia the main obstacle to implementation of democracy in Belarus because of its support to Lukashenko's regime? That's my question. Thank you.
What was the question? I'm not sure we got it.
Isn't like Ms. Tsikhanouskaya said that she sees Russia as a future partner,
Okay.
but now isn't Russia the main obstacle to implementation of democracy in Belarus?
All right, thank you. Is Russia the main obstacle to the implementation of democracy? Yes, please.
So first of all, let me thank you for this inspiring speech and also for your courageous fight for democracy. And my question would relate to what you think sparked this push for democracy 2020 as opposed to, for example, 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
And we take your third question.
My question is, if you assume power, if you became president of Belarus, which foreign capital would you visit first?
All right. Very risky question. The floor is yours.
Again, Russia, you know, for 27 years, European countries and international community got used to the idea that Belarus, if you knew where Belarus is at all, is an appendix of Russia, that we are part of Russia. But we are not. We are a separate country, and with our own culture, with our own language. It's not up to Russia or any other country to decide the future of Belarusian people. It's only up to us. Of course, for President of Russia and ex-president of Belarus have very long and strange relationship. And they got used to each other. They know how to communicate, and maybe it's evidently that Kremlin supported Lukashenko after elections, because I think that Kremlin also didn't expect such uprising of people. They were not prepared for this, and the same as Lukashenko lost, didn't catch the mood of people. The same with Russia. They were sure that Lukashenko, as usual, will crack down the protests and people will come down. But honestly speaking, Lukashenko now is toxic to European countries. He's economically and politically isolated, and he's becoming too expensive for Kremlin. Too expensive politically, too expensive financially, and I doubt that Kremlin would back him long time. So, of course, it's not acceptable, acceptable for Russia to allow changes in Belarus through revolution, through uprising, because the situation in Russia is also not very stable, but again, it's not up to them to decide. It is obstacle, of course, as you say, obstacle to implementation of democracy. But we just have to deal with the situation we have. Yes, Russia is supporting Lukashenko now, not so evidently, but it's our movement, and behind us, with us, at least 27 countries, and Lukashenko has just several with him. So we are united, we are stronger than he is. The only thing we don't have violence with us. We don't want to use any kind of violence against people. So I think that we will find out the way how to deal with the regime taken into consideration back in Russia. The second question was what influenced, would you remind me?
How would you assess the movement today and the support in the society compared to 5 years or 10 years ago?
You mean in Belarus?
Yes.
Uprisings in Belarus were after every elections in Belarus. Maybe only the first elections were legitimate, legal, were how? Democratic, thank you. Yeah, but when people understood whom we have chosen, people started to resist. Not many people were involved because it was after Soviet Union period. People were looking for ways how to survive, and nobody was in politics. And people, the generation of our grandparents and our parents who grew up in Soviet Union, there were no such moods among those generation, to resist. There were not so many people, but now new generation grew up, young people who can see how other countries live. They want to live in the prosperous country where they are respected, where they have possibility to study, where medicine is on a good level, where government takes care of people. So now we have possibility to see the difference. Maybe this is the main reason, one of the main reasons why people resisting at the moment. Maybe I didn't answer your question, perfectly, but sorry. And which foreign capital would I visit first? I'm living in Vilnius now, and this city became my second house. And of course, I want to come back to Minsk with my family, but for sure, it will be Vilnius.
Thank you very much. We're starting with the lady on my right. So
thank you.
Please.
First, thank you for your presence here. My question is about all the Belarusian students that are currently studying abroad, and especially in Poland. Do you think they can contribute, and how can they contribute to the fight for democracy in Belarus? Because there is a lot of them that are studying abroad.
I'm not sure I got your question.
Oh, it's a question of Belarusian students that are studying abroad.
Students.
Yes, students.
Okay. Okay, the role of students in the civic movement. Thank you. Yes.
Hello. First of all, I really enjoyed the speech because as a displaced person due to lack of democracy and repression, I feel very identified by your statements. So my question goes to the fact that virtually you have even one or even two generations in Belarus of people that do not know democracy, have never been close to democracy. How would you implement a democratic culture in the people? And of course, also the bigger challenge will also be in an institutional level. How would that process be in the future? Thank you.
Thank you for the question of democratic culture. And the third question, please.
A quick tail end on the first question. A friend who is a Belarusian student abroad is currently campaigning to have other students write letters to political prisoners in Belarus, and I'd be happy to share the link. But first and foremost, thank you for your incredible speech and also for your story representing the power of love and compassion for justice and democracy. On that note, I was curious, what is your experience as being one of the first women leaders in Belarusian politics? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
One second.
The floor is yours.
No, the role of student in this civic uprising, civil uprising, is extremely important. The role of students are usually the students and young generation are usually driving force of any revolution, and students in our country participated greatly in demonstrations. That's why a lot of them were expelled, and moreover, professors and deans of universities who wanted to protect their students also have been fired because of this. And thanks to international programs for educational programs for repressed students, I think that every student got opportunity to continue education in Poland or Lithuania or other countries. And these students, for sure, they are studying now in wonderful universities to come back to Belarus and implement the knowledges into in our country. For sure, people are not going to stay abroad, mostly of them at least, and they want to be useful in new Belarus. As for, we have been living under dictatorship for 27 years. Of course, we don't have experience of living in democratic countries, but we have opportunity to see, thanks, God bless internet, how other countries live, what it means to live in a democratic country where people are respected, where rule of law prevails. And I think that, of course, Belarusian people will have to study how it is to live in democracy. Because for me, democracy is first of all responsibility. And when for 27 years you have been told what to do, how to act, and you couldn't take your own decisions, it would be difficult to adopt to new rules. But I'm sure that having paid such a high price for these changes, for democratic changes in Belarus, for these values, I think that we will study rather fast. You know, I'm an example of fast studying. A year ago, I was just a woman, and I maybe underestimated the strength, my own strength, the possibility to study fast. And I think that Belarusian people will very fast will adopt to democratic values, to democratic rules. And, you know, when people are respected, when people understand that they are responsible for the future, they want to work much harder. They want to be useful for the country because they know that they are doing everything, not for one person, but for the whole nation. I think that we will succeed. We will take the best experience from different countries and implement them in New Belarus. So the history will show. And what was the third question? What was the third question? Which remind me about women in politics in Belarus?
That's right. That's right. Being the first woman. And the role of women was very strong in the civic movement in general.
Yeah, but it also happened unexpectedly and accidentally, I would say, because, you know, I'm here only because my husband was jailed and I wanted to show what he was doing important for me. The same with Masha. Viktor Babarika was in jail and she was instead of him. Veronika Tsepkalo, the same. You know, behind every strong man is standing a strong woman. And when our men have been jailed and were tortured in jails in first days of uprising, our women discovered that, you know, it's high time for them to stand in front of them and to protect them, because we at that moment women were sure that riot policemen will not beat them because they were women. And this women movement became so strong and inspiring for the rest of the population, for the rest of the men, just to go for a demonstration, that, you know, it was really I will not find the word.
Okay.
Yeah,
but I think we understood.
Yeah, and I'm still not sure that I'm politician. Yes, I'm the first woman in politics from Belarus side, and you know, I'm still ordinary woman. Okay, I'm in politics. I'm communicating to the leaders of democratic countries. But I'm not experienced politics. You know, I define myself as intuitive politicians, because, you know, I have no education, I have no experience, but I'm talking from my heart as a woman, as representative of my country. Maybe it's, you know, it's a little bit strange, but, you know, this is my fate, maybe. So it's difficult. Maybe in the countries where there is no uprisings, no revolution, it's rather easy to be a woman, a woman politician. A woman, help me please. A woman politician, woman.
Woman politician.
Woman politician. But in our situation, you're a man or woman, doesn't matter. It's difficult. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have time to take 3 more
May I?
questions, but I guess that
Up
will be
here.
the last ones, right? Because we'll have to finish afterwards. So
Up here, sorry. Because
okay.
otherwise.
No, okay. No,
I have-
absolutely. I have to give you the floor.
Thank you. It's 2 quick questions, so you can answer to whichever you want. You said earlier that you ran for office not expecting to win, but you still did it. So what was your biggest hope and your biggest fear out of, well, in taking that step? And the second one is, you also said that we are trying to overthrow the dictatorship or the tyranny without violence. Looking at the experience of other Eastern European countries, do you think objectively that is possible? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, one on the right and one on the left, and I have to apologize for the other students, but we will not have time. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for a very interesting speech. And I wanted to pick up on what you talked about students and how they were in the forefront of the demonstration and how many of them have gone to other countries to continue their education in sort of a safe space. I used to work in an organization that ran such a program in Norway, the Students at Risk program. And I've always wanted to ask someone from the opposition movement, what does it mean when so many students flee your country? And even though it's a good thing for the individual students, and even though it's a good thing when they eventually come back, what do you think the effects will be of so many students fleeing the country, both on the civic movement in the short term, but also on the upgrowing generations and the consequences that they have seen?
Okay. Is it clear for you? It's the question of students and young people in general leaving the country and the effect on the future of the society.
Mm-hmm. Hey.
Please.
I would like to thank you for your speech because your actions are very inspiring also, I think, for Cambodia's democracy, because people are too afraid to act and due to their history and the oppression that is over there. And some argue that they're not ready for this democratic transition. So how would you, where would you start to have this democratic transition? And I think education has a big role in it. So where would you start to have a, transitional justice and transitional democratic?
And you said you are from Cambodia?
Yeah, I have origins from Cambodia.
Okay, all right. But that was the example you used, right,
Yes.
in your question. Thank you very much. Okay, so what could be the source of inspiration of your movement?
Is there room for one
other
more
democratic
question on the
movement?
top
No, no,
floor?
it's finished. Sorry for that.
You could have given us a bit more attention.
The inspiration of the Belarus movement or other experience of democratization. Okay, please. Well, except if you want to stay 2 more hours.
I had a long day, excuse me. The question was, what was your biggest hope and fear? No, the whole year I have hope that we will succeed soon, that we will prevail soon, that we will celebrate our victory soon. And the fear I got the whole year is that we will not succeed soon, that we will not prevail soon, and we will not will not celebrate our victory. But you understand that you can't stop. You have to proceed this fight, because all those people who sacrificed with their lives, with their freedom, with their health, who are behind the bars now, your comrades, your beloved, your relatives, they sacrificed with all this to give you opportunity to fight further. And you can't betray them. And everybody who participated in demonstrations also understand their responsibility. And you just, sometimes, of course, you are despaired. You want to give up because you have no more strength. You don't want to wake up in the morning because everything is so difficult, especially when you get news that 100 people have been detained, when 1 more organizations have been destroyed. I don't know, 1 more person was killed. But in the morning, you wake up and understand your husband now doesn't have opportunity to drink a cup of coffee. He doesn't know where he can be released. And it's up to you. It's up to every Belarusian. It's up to every democratic countries if he's going to spend years in jail or he's going to be released in the nearest future. And you take yourself and go and win small victories. So step by step, maybe they are small, they are not confident, but you are moving towards victory. So maybe now I'm not scared that we will not win, because I'm sure that we will. And you know, that's why all the society and international community should be mobilized and be with Belarusians in our fight, because it's also responsibility of other countries to prove that the words, that common values, that rule of law is not just empty words for you, but you are ready to transfer the words into real actions to help our country to win this fight. And we want to win peacefully. And I'm sure that it is possible to, in 21st century, to fight peacefully. We have to understand that we are civilized people. I'm talking about mostly, of course, you know, about Europe. And we have to find ways for dialogue. We have to find peaceful solutions of the crisis, because every gesture of violence could bring to serious collapse of democracy. We are already on the front line of fight between democracy and autocracy. Yeah, and I see that in democratic countries, people got used to democracy. They stopped value what they have. But look at us, it's so difficult to gain democracy in your country. And we really, Belarus can be an example, maybe the first time in the history, if you think that there were no examples in the past, that peaceful transition is possible. And we want to prove this, first of all, for ourselves. We think that it's enough victims in Belarus, and we don't want any new victims among our people. Students and the young generation who flee the country, yes.
That's right.
You know, it's much better when you are under repression to flee the country and continue your studies in European university, to have this experience of communication with the international students, to understand how democracy works, and to bring this knowledge back to Belarus. So you asked me, is it easy to gain these democratic values? We need new brains, people who know how democracy works. And that's why it's profitable at the moment when our students are studying in foreign universities. Though those who are still in Belarus, of course, they are also important, but we need international experience to implement knowledges into new Belarus. And source of inspiration in Belarusian movement.
For the other democratic movements in the world. For other democratic movements in the world.
Source of inspiration.
What would you advise to somebody who said, well, we would like to go to the same direction than you, resisting to autocracy? What are the, well, 2 or 3 advices you would address?
First of all, majority of the country needs to believe in the goal you want to gain. There should be a change in minds of people that you really want these changes. So believe in yourselves, and underestimate your strength, underestimate your value in your country, and be united, stay united. You know, we have propaganda always wants to split democratic forces in Belarus. They don't understand that there is no competition between democratic leaders in our case. We are united with one goal. Of course, before elections, there will be party competition or between people competition, but now we дополняем друг друга, complement each other. We create multiple points of pressure on the regime inside the country, and there is no arguing between us. So stay united and try to mobilize people around you, foreigners around you, and just stay strong. I really don't know. We have no such experience in Belarus. We are studying how to uprise. We are studying how to act efficiently against the regime. Maybe we made mistakes during our path, but we believe in our goal. We believe in our people, and we believe in better future for Belarus.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this fantastic lesson of hope and also modesty. And democracy is also about modesty. Thank you very much.